Today, we finally get to take the new and improved red wagon for a spin, and we get to see the doors blown off one of the most sought-after speed records in the world by a car with no doors. If I didn't say it, I've been waiting for this one to get finished, I'd be lying. Well, now it is. This is one of the meanest fire-breathing wagons you'll ever see. But first, let's get some perspective on it. When the wagon first came to the shop, it was kind of a dog. A good-looking dog. A good dog, but all bark and no bite. And these days, I think it's kind of a crime to get a car all did up and looking fast, but then leave it original. Well, just leave the original everything, really. So the stock inline 6 is nearly indestructible in one of these, but it's hardly a powerhouse. The plan was to take this killer-looking wagon and do the new chassis and engine thing to it so that it was drivable and comfortable and fast. And that's hardly a new idea, but Troy took the refinement of this car personally. He even made sure the decibel output of the exhaust was just right. He pocketed the inner part of the cowl to make room for the AC unit so that it wasn't hanging down on the floor to give the passenger plenty of footroom. And then he made sure that the rear passengers would get some of that air too. Very thoughtful. Casey couldn't just replace the old front of the rear cargo area with a flat piece of steel. Oh no, he had to make it just right. And Adam couldn't just leave the old trans tunnel. He had to make way for that big old bulletproof Buller 4L80E. And well, let's just say that the project was supposed to create a faster, better driving version of an old car, but it turned into something else entirely when the dust settled. And the firewall was completely replaced by Adam that I thought he was the interior guy. And Alex went to town making a very tidy new wiring harness for the entire car. And while all that was going on, Moose tirelessly put the finishing touches on the fine details, like the wheels. And when we came back to check on the wagon's newfound badassery, we were not expecting to see that the interior had been completely redone. That was not on the original list. At least I don't think it was. And here it is, the Rad Rides by Troy Brookwood wagon, complete with an LSX with a single turbo, handmade exhaust. Oh, handmade everything, really. I mean, inner fender wells, radiator, intercooler, you name it. Pretty much everything. A new chassis with independent suspension at both ends, and it's all ready to go to multiple land speed record holder and owner George Poteet. He's on his way to see it in its finished form. I've always looked up to George Poteet for being such a big influence in the industry. He has so many hot rods built by so many different builders, and he's just a darn good person. But he has moved straight to the top of my favoriteest people list because he lets me drive some of his awesome cars. Cheap sunglasses, check. Put the window up and get some AC going in here. Oh, baby. Even the horn works. What are you, crazy? Alright, I'm very privileged to be out alone in the Brookwood wagon. Man, this car has come a long way since the time I first drove it. It is absolutely buttoned down now. I mean, it just was an old car with big wheels on it before, and some air ride suspension so you could dump it on the ground and make it look cool once you got where you were going, But now, it looks cool all the time. But the brakes are state-of-the-art. I mean, the interior's been absolutely redone, but it's definitely still recognizable as, being very close to the stock interior. But the quality materials are just, there's no comparison. They have really got the spring rates and the shock damping dialed in on this thing. And the chassis is so much more rigid and compliant than the old one. These cars were kind of, all wonky from the factory, you know? They were pretty soft. And then when you add a really big wheel with a small sidewall, it just amplifies all that. Well, in contrast, the way it's done now is it just feels totally refined. I was a little puzzled when it reached the level of being really cool, and then Troy just kept going on refinement. Okay, you know, how much of a difference can all of these details make? And it's a lot. I mean, we were looking at everything from watching Troy, you know, measure the decibels of the exhaust, and what he was trying to do there was get rid of the resonant frequency that you normally get in a wagon like this. All that's been cut out. I mean, the car is quiet, it's smooth as silk. And there's a term called sleeper that I feel like it's kind of overused, you know. That's basically a car that is, you know, a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. So obviously this thing has an LSX with a turbo on it. It's probably around 800 horsepower. Very healthy, fast car. Looks like an old wagon, so you don't see it coming. This car is just makes you feel confident when you get in it. I don't even want to jump all over it. I want to go on a road trip. Put 4 people in here, get the AC kicking just fine. Okay, who am I kidding? The more I drive this thing, the less I can resist pushing the pedal down just enough to make some boost. One of the cool things is there's just a knob here you pull that looks like a knob from the factory, and what it does is opens the dump valve for the turbo while simultaneously adding, I think, about 6 or 7 pounds of boost, which is really considerable. That's a lot of horsepower. So not only are you increasing boost, which increases horsepower, you're increasing the efficiency of the turbo, which increases horsepower. And that equals buttloads of fun. It's no slouch. It's that beautiful blow-off valve. Love that sound. Maybe I'll just leave this here knob open. I want to get in trouble for that. My time with the wagon was up. If you remember, Wheel Hub magazine was at the shop in an earlier episode doing a shoot for Rydell's 41. They actually have a couple more titles to check out, and are going to be putting the wagon in an upcoming issue of their Chevy Hub magazine. And when I say magazine, that's what they call it. But using Jared words, I think of it as a very fancy big book. Either way, it's something for us fans of the Little Red Wagon to look forward to. But before that happens, Troy's going to hand it off to George Poteet for his first look at the car.
It's a little different than we're running a race car.
Troy and George Poteet have been longtime friends. I was able to sit down with them and get some details on how they first met.
I met George in 1994 at Detroit Autorama. I think I'd heard his name mentioned. He was under the radar back then, but I knew the name, and I met him. He had his overalls on, and I had Danny Jacobs' 39 Chevy there, the Predator, and George had a 37 convertible that Don Pilkington built going for the Riddler, and George beat us. That's how I met George. So I think I actually won in the long run by meeting George.
Well, Troy's car was prettier than mine, and now Don Pilkington built a 37. He'd won the Riddler a couple of times before, so he knew how to wax and polish on them better. I knew Troy's car was prettier than mine, better than mine.
He just tried to make me feel good when I met him.
No, I wasn't either. But Troy, that 37 Ford was an ugly car.
But like I said, I feel I won because I got George for a lifelong buddy, and it was kind of funny. So then we talked to each other for a few minutes, and he told me the same thing. He thought our car was prettier, which was nice because you're all distraught from losing. And then I seen him about probably 3-4 months later. We were at the Peterson Museum on the rooftop for the start of the Power Tour. And I looked down there, and he was with Danny and Eric and all the guys, and I kind of looked down there, and he seen me, and we waved, and so I went and talked to him, and I'll never forget. He goes, "You gonna drive that car on the tour?" I go, "Yeah, that's why we built it." And so that's kind of what started it. We were driving cross country and hanging out at night, and he asked me what I wanted to build next, and I said, I just crumpled up picture of the Sniper, the 54 Plymouth, and George learned how to drive a little bit in a 54 Plymouth, and the rest is history.
That's good history.
Yeah. So we by the end of the tour, after talking every night, we decided, well, let's find a car to start with, and And then we built this Sniper in was it 96, 97 in 13 months, and that was a fun project, and unveiled it at the Hilton out there, and that started the relationship.
This was a one-room garage at that time.
Yep.
All they had was a stick welder. So
It wasn't real high tech. Yeah. I'm sure he showed up after we started the car and walked through all the truck shops, and I was all the way in the back shop and was like, thought it'd be bigger than this. You know, it's 20 by 40, but somehow we got the job done, and it was, that car was really good, and kind of, you know, at the time, hell, you can bring it out today and it still would fit in as a good custom. So, but George was my first real customer that let us do what we needed to do and believed in us.
I've kind of watched Troy grow up. His dad and I were the same age, and Jack always referred to him as the kid. The kid. Troy and Jack were funny. They'd go on these tours, and you'd never see the hood up on a car. I mean, you'd think something has to break sometime. Never see the hood up on a car. So one morning about 4 o'clock, I got up and went out in the garage, and Jack was there with the hood up on the car.
It's got to be sneaky, George, that's all. Man, this stuff drives great. We never breaks down.
So here we are with yet another Rad Rides creation commissioned by George. I'm guessing he's going to have a lot of fun driving this one, even though he has some cars that are faster, much faster. Well, it's always nice to see George, and now he's got a little bit more time to talk and hopefully less to think about, because he's officially retired, as I understand it, and he's off with his new car. And bear with me, we're going to take a weird turn here, but this still involves George. I took my family on a trip a while back because at the last minute I decided we probably didn't want to miss this. Hi, honey.
Hi, honey.
I know you just finished a 12-hour shift, but you want to get in a car and drive 38 hours and go watch some cars race in the desert?
Why did you wait till the day we have to leave?
That's how things work out.
Can I shower?
What is your mom doing?
Sleeping.
So we got on the road and drove what was supposed to be like a 38-hour trip, but there ended up being a forest fire, among other things. Interstate 80's been shut down. We don't know why, but it's going to add a couple hours to the trip. This is gorgeous, unbelievable. That's why it's important to get out, enjoy your country, enjoy your freedom. Made it well over a 40-hour trip straight through to get to Bonneville to see George go after a record. And here's the thing, they're chasing 500 miles an hour. That's what the team wants, as I understand. And this is something that has put George in a position where he's gone 400 miles an hour on the ground more than any other person alive. And I think that's really significant. And the reason for that is that it keeps slipping through his fingers is, how do you get a car to stay together when it goes into uncharted territory? Because we're not talking about just, being the fastest car in its category. This is the fastest piston-driven, wheel-driven car on the planet. It's already proven that. But in order to really hold that title and get the trophy and make it all official, it's got to do it twice with all the same parts. You can imagine it's very difficult, but it's put him in 460 miles an hour, 440 miles an hour, 400, just all over the place. So what if this thing was able to just say go 460 and then turn around and go 460 again, and we missed it? So I had a hunch that this was going to be the time that it was going to get close to 500. We got into town after sunset, and it became apparent that we were in the right place. There was the presence of cool cars and hot rods all over, and some of them will even be racing in the coming days. After such a long ride, it was time to let the cars rest and get some rest of our own, because when the sun comes up the next morning, there's already going to be a lot going on. Alright, it's off to bed then. It's going to be an early day. It's crazy to be in civilization 1 minute, and a short drive later, you get out there and it's just nothing. I mean, as soon as you leave the pavement, it's like someone flips a light switch and it's just desolate as far as you can see, other than mountains in the horizon. It's totally flat. And then when you get to the pit area, which is miles away from the starting line, it's just fascinating. It's kind of like, I'm a big fan of the Mad Max movies, but it's a lot like Thunderdome or any of those others where It's just all these crazy machines put together and all these wild people in a desert, just like Mad Max, going as fast as they can, you know? And it just, there's nothing like it. After a year of preparation and fine-tuning, it was no surprise to see the Speed Demon crew mixed in the crowd at the starting line. Another record was up for grabs, and they're ready to get at it. It was the first run for the Speed Demon, and the car has cameras all over it so the crew gets a close-up look at what's going on while it's hurling down the track. They were awesome enough to share it so that all of us can have a first-person view of what they see. It's a special opportunity to see the fastest piston-powered machine on the ground in action. The camera angles of the runs of the cars, the way they get to see it. As fast as it appears to be going, this car wasn't even close to its potential. Being the first run, this was more of a function of getting the car out of the trailer and just seeing where it's at.
All right, 285.721 and mile 2.
Now, 308 miles an hour is very quick, but it's not going to cut it for this crew. And as the week goes on, they're going to make sure that those numbers steadily improve. After some quick adjustments, they were right back at the line, ready for a second run. If you haven't seen a land speed run before, you might wonder why they're using a push truck. Well, there's nothing subtle about the clutch in this beast. It knows the positions of on and off, and that's it. So starting from a dead stop and trying to get rolling in a controlled fashion with over 3,000 horsepower on tap is just not doable without losing traction or getting the back end loose. Putting it simply, it's a much more graceful way to get the car under control and keep it under control. It allows them to gain some momentum before they start engaging the transmission. And not only does it make for a smoother start, it also helps cut down on the unnecessary wear and tear of the machine. Without question, that was a way faster run. The crew was very clearly and very quickly on top of getting the tune right. The ultimate goal for the Speed Demon is to hit 500 miles per hour, but they'll be breaking other records on the way. For the moment, a 448 mile per hour record is the priority. That would make them the fastest piston-driven, wheel-driven vehicle on the planet. With a run of 441 miles per hour, they had beaten their previous run by over 100 miles per hour, but still 7 miles per hour under the record. Close, but no cigar. With some time left in day one, the Speed Demon crew sent George out for one more run. And make no mistake, they're making gains. They know they're getting close to being over the target. And I really don't think they're holding back on things like timing or boost. They came here to get results. They're throwing what they got at these runs. Things were looking good until the pain came. The computer-controlled fire suppression system in his car is impressive and keeps George safe. It knocks the fire out quick, but the intensity of the heat still takes its toll on the back of the car. The good news was that they were just 1 mile an hour under the record, so they know they can get it. The bad news was, well, this. When they got back to the pit, they found a piston with a hole in it. This caused the boost to leak past the piston and into the crankcase. That positive pressure pushed oil out of the engine and started a fire.
What's up, Jeff?
Herbinator! Herbicane! Is that your fault, Herb?
Huh?
I know you threw a nickel in there.
Oh, yeah.
Just admit it. I got a chance to talk to Danny about what happened. Danny used to drive Blowfish.
The last mile and a half we only ran on 7 cylinders and it ran 455 miles an hour. I said we ought to just kill number 7, go back out and run it again, you know. If it's pulling that hard on 7, it'll run 450 by itself.
Definitely. So you said it gained 60 miles an hour on 7 cylinders?
Yeah,
That's just awesome.
it's a beast. We had about 24 pounds of boost in it too. It's got so much torque. If you boost it up, you're just gonna spin the tires.
Yeah.
But that engine, Kenny's been telling us, he said, this motor, you're not going to believe it. When's the last time that Speed Demon had only 24 pounds of boost?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, 24 is a lot, but it's not by
40
comparison.
to 50 pounds of boost in it.
God.
So to make it live 10 miles wide open like that is a tough thing to do.
Definitely.
But this engine, we're not sure why it burned a piston. The plugs are not lean or anything, so it's just racing. But it didn't hurt anything else. And we had pistons. You use the same rods, put new rings in it, and go back to work.
And with that, Herb was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the engine still needed to be rebuilt. So no more racing for day 2. With the engine needing to be completely rebuilt, this was going to keep them off the track for at least a day. Since they were working, I figured that gave us a free day to walk around and meet some of the other people in the neighborhood.
I want to. Too hot.
We were happy to run into Shug and Irene. They've known George and been friends with him a lot longer than us, but I've known them long enough to know this is where you go to get some great stories.
The steering wheel story takes off in the race car. It's an open compartment, it's a roadster, and I'm really close to the 3, and the car starts to spin out. In the process of the car spinning out, the wheels lock left to right, and each time the wheels lock, your steering wheel goes left, right, really quickly. And it done this like about 4 times, and on the 4th time it vibrated. It was only aluminium. It vibrated and broke off and flew right out the window basically. Oh my God. And then so I come to a stop, and one of the officials comes up and looks in the car and says, "Where's the steering wheel?" And I says, he says, "Did you leave the start line without a steering wheel?" I says, "Are you kidding me?" He says, "I know you." And I says, "Oh, I'm not that bad." He says, "Oh yeah, I've heard stories about you." I says, "No, it's on the course there somewhere. You better go and find it." So they went and found the steering wheel, and it cleared me of not leaving the start line with no steering wheel.
You had another steering wheel story. Betty was telling me how you met George.
Oh yeah. The first time I ever met George, I was here with my 58 truck, and George is looking around the truck and he looks inside, and I've got this wood rim steering wheel. I think it's an early Grant steering wheel on my truck. And George says, "Would you like to sell that steering wheel?" And I said, "Yeah, it has no significance to me. It's only for the truck." And George says, "I really like that steering wheel." He says, "I'll give you $500 for it." So I says, "Yeah, thanks." I jumps inside and starts taking the steering wheel off. And George says, "What are you doing?" I says, "I'm taking the steering wheel off." He says, "How are you going to get home?" I says, vice grips. You know, he says, no, wait till you go home and then send it to me. He says, and everything will be fine. Just take it off when you get home. I says, really? He says, yeah, really. So he was, for that kind of money, that was like, it was a godsend, especially at that time in my life for coming here. We didn't have a lot of money, but
Still got the steering wheel on that 56 truck.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So.
And some smoke coming out, and he's pulled the chute at the 3.5.
So it's day number 3, and thanks to the Speed Demon crew's tireless work, they got the engine back in the car, and we were staring down the barrel of run number 4. Judging by how fast the car left that helicopter in the dust, I'd say this thing was well on its way to another great run. But suddenly, you can see George commanding the car to shift with no results. The reason for that was that the drive shaft was no longer attached to the rear end. Imagine how fast that poor pinion is spinning, not to mention the power going through it, and it just gave up. Needless to say, the guys had yet another problem to fix.
Continuing, I don't see a chute. Poteet going 450
He is not.
Mile 715 in mile 4 in the middle mile.
Back at the pits, the Speed Demon crew got the car in and out as fast as if it were there for an oil change. Now we're ready for the 5th run. Funny thing about engine fires is sometimes it takes a little while for all the damage to rear its ugly head.
Here it comes. Picking up a nice little tail of salt. Remember, this is a new
I think that some of the wires had been melted together, causing a short, which made the car run rich and took away from the power. With a run under 400 miles an hour, they were going to need to sort out the problem before the next run was going to take place. Okay, Speed Demon just came back to the pits. I came to my man Graham here to give us a lowdown on what's going to happen. So it just ran like 395. It's got a lot more in it. What's the story?
So we were running a little too rich. That means that there was too much fuel in the engine.
Down a couple cylinders,
Yeah,
I guess.
we were down to 2 cylinders. There's way too much fuel, so the spark plug wasn't getting anything. So we didn't run at full speed, but I think we are going to be able to run today. Just drain a little bit of the fuel. And then we'll be good to go.
That's all we need to hear, that you'll be good to go. So we're going to try it again today. Awesome. Thanks, buddy. The team managed to get the car out one last time on the 3rd day. Runs 6 and 7 worked out fantastically, with run 7 being an over 450 mile per hour pass, bumping the record from the class they were in to a combined effort of 439.246 miles an hour. But that landed them in timeout. Now that's a place you go called impound, where the car is subject to limitations of what can be done to it between a qualifying run and a record run. And that really adds to the difficulty, as if this isn't hard enough. They emerged victorious with a new record, and it was time for Run 8. If Run 8 goes as planned, it'll break the record they just set and land them back in impound. And it's back to impound. Looks like they're breaking their own records on the way to that 4:48 mark they have their eyes set on. But for this team, it's about being the fastest, period. And God knows they've tried. It has been years of hard work. A record qualified for on a given day is backed up in the morning. So there's some strategy involved, because the car is going to be stuck in impound if they decide to take the win. And I'm happy to report they did. That meant it's dinner time. And the Speed Demon crew is no stranger to hospitality, so we ate with them.
I took one of the kidneys.
Yeah, you did. One of them ate so much, he broke the shit out of a chair.
Yeah.
Show us your nice work.
Hey, let me have that one.
I don't think it'd be bad. Probably welded.
Yeah, plaster weld.
You have to sit on metal now.
Don't let any. Yeah, Eric's in a metal chair.
Oh, damn, you got it low down, too.
Cheers, recording it.
Small.
The next morning, dinner was no longer on the table, but Run 9 was. This was the last full day of racing for the Speed Demon team. So if they're going to break 448 miles an hour, or even get close to 500, they need to make it bare minimum 2 passes today. Tomorrow is Friday, and it is for backup runs only. And keep in mind, this car has 8 runs on it, which is an absolutely brutal torture test for any race car. There's definitely some pressure mounting, and the Demon is so close after that last run to breaking the 448 mile per hour zone, it hurts. My son was down at the 4 mile mark with some of the other Speed Demon fans.
In mile 2, in the corner, 332.
Hell yes! It is so freaking awesome to watch these guys bag another record. When Run 9 was over, the mile per hour was actually a little bit slower at 433. But they did manage to break their own record again with an average of 439.589 miles per hour. The record that they're trying for isn't even in their class, and it was set by a car with 2 engines. There just isn't enough hours in the day for a bunch of runs once you factor in all of the labor that's involved to maintain this beast. The car was thoroughly torn apart and gone through for what will end up being their last chance to qualify for a faster run. Run 10 has me feeling like the first time I got into a fist fight. There was enough butterflies in my stomach to start an army, and I'm just a spectator.
25 record, mile 3, 4:36, 9:40.
Holy cow!
469 last mile, 477.
Holy cow!
Into impound. Holy moly.
As if you couldn't tell, that was one of the coolest things I've ever witnessed. But for these guys, it appears as though it's just business as usual. Now it's time for the big question. Can they back it up? Well, I don't want to waste any time, so let's get to it. Despite how good these guys are, the chances of pulling this off are about as good as winning the lottery. That was the automotive equivalent of going to the moon. For those of you who are fans of Leave Well Enough Alone, here's an unedited version.
297, 268. In the quarter, 357.941. Mile 3,
It's gonna do it.
383.168. Mile 4, 438.626. Mile 5, 470.733. Exit speed of 481. Those numbers are hard to say.
470 miles per hour definitely cemented the record. And a 481 mile per hour exit speed? I'm sure that gave the team confidence that hitting the elusive 500 mile per hour record is going to be possible in the near future. There was hardly anyone else on the Salt Flats that morning, but I'm guessing that every last one of us were absolutely thrilled to see history unfold right in front of us. How often is it that you see a guy in his golden years in a golden car obliterate the standing land speed record? I can't think of two better people to share it with than my wife and son. And as far as George and his crew, I was ecstatic to see their hard work pay off. And I can't forget our friends at Mariani Racing, who also set a record of their own while we were out there. So congrats to them too. And we'll be seeing a lot more from them in the future as well. Well, this wraps up our first 10 episodes. That's right. Season 2 is on its way. And while you're watching this, we're already moving on to the next 10. And we're going to be bringing you some amazing builds from the shop, as well as some, hopefully, some more land speed records. We'd really like to thank everyone who watches the show, and we can't wait for you to see what we're working on for Season 2. I'm Jared Zimmerman. Thanks for watching Rad Rides by Troy.
I better be on Season 2.